am so honored and pleased and happy to be here with all of you, and I'm just honored to be your keynote speaker and to have the opportunity to meet you all and to spend time with you, and I look forward to the next few days as we get to know each other much better. So, Theosophy holds a very special place in our hearts. I will say, I'll start over again, I do use my computer for my talk. I am from the southern part of the United States. In the southern part of the United States, we tend to have an accent. And without it written out, my accent becomes very thick. And even people in the United States have difficulty understanding me. So, Theosophy holds a very special place in our hearts. We're here today because we care about the organization, the teachings, and its promise for the future. It provides us with a way of life, an ethic by which we can live and make decisions. It answers the questions that humanity has asked for ages. Who am I? Why am I here? What is the purpose of the universe? And on and on. The depth and breadth of Theosophy is mind-boggling. Yet it has been said, and I paraphrase, that Theosophy has shallows in which a child can wade and depths in which a giant can swim. It is a philosophy, a way of life, that requires lifetimes of exploration, of study, contemplation, and meditation. Through these explorations, through these lifetimes, we are endeavoring to reach the heart of these teachings, to have an experience, a direct perception that connects us to the core of Theosophy, a connection to the heart of Theosophy. So, the heart of Theosophy is obviously key to our conversation this evening. After some exploration in this vein, we'll follow up with a discussion that focuses on the soul, and finally, investigates the soul's journey toward that heart. While our discussions are all cognitive, head-focused, it is important to recognize that what we are seeking is the experience, the direct perception that touches our innermost being. When we have this experience, even for a split second, it brings the teachings alive in a way that just defy description with mere words. As we are all aware, Theosophy is the current iteration of the Ageless Wisdom, which Joy Mills refers to as the priceless heritage, which is the wisdom of the ages. It is that slender thread of truth that has been shared with the privileged few throughout time, and that now, through the Theosophical Society, has been made available to any who are seeking. We are that privileged few. Clearly, having been exposed to the ageless wisdom long before this specific lifetime. Although, if we look at the tenets of the Theosophical teachings, we know that none of us are favored or privileged. As H.P.B. wrote in the third fundamental proposition of the Secret Doctrine, the pivotal doctrine of the esoteric philosophy admits no privileges or special gifts in man, save those won by his own ego through personal effort and merit, through a long series of metempsychoses, and reincarnations. Throughout lifetimes, we have sought, we have learned, and we have ultimately won the gift of being in touch with the wisdom that explains the universe. While through these lifetimes we have touched on the reality of the ageless wisdom, we still have so much more to learn, so much more to understand. It's possible to look at ourselves as having the understanding of an elementary school student, while our goal is to understand the ageless wisdom as a master, either with a capital M or a small m. To attain our goal, we continue to study, to talk, to contemplate, and to explore the seemingly endless mysteries of the ageless wisdom. Even the very small amount that we believe we understand about the ageless wisdom as expressed through Theosophy is complex and multifaceted. Our conversations about the ageless wisdom range from the unmanifest through spiritual evolution to the lives we live on this physical plane. It addresses the components of the macrocosm as well as the microcosm, leading us to consider life in its many aspects. The ultimate source that is the ground of all being is part of our consideration. The eternal cycle of spiritual growth and evolution is as well. And most importantly, the oneness that binds us all together. So we may wonder, is there a core teaching that will help us to understand all of the rest? Is there one important component upon which we can focus? Something that brings us to the innermost heart of our search? Possibly, the answer to these questions is quite simply love. That's supposed to all be on one line. Well. Can we even imagine a world filled with love? Can we imagine a world in which individuals care for one another with compassion and understanding? Can we imagine a world in which everyone works together for peace and harmony? It's hard to imagine, isn't it? Well, we may be reminded of the lyrics to the song by John Lennon, Imagine. Don't anybody get up and sing. Well, you can if you're one of those people who can sing. I'm not, so it's hard to read it and not want to sing it. But just to touch on a few of these lyrics. Imagine there's no heaven, no hell. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine no countries, nothing to kill or die for, no religion. Imagine all the people living in peace and the world as one. Imagine no possessions, no need for greed or hunger, a brotherhood of men and women. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. It would be a world with no religious persecution, no political or geographical boundaries, no possessions, no greed or hunger. Imagine brotherhood and sisterhood, all of us living together and sharing the world. Imagine love as the core of all choices and actions. Sounds like a theosophical world, doesn't it? Well, we know, or at least we believe, but I think we know, that compassion, unity, understanding, peace, and harmony are hallmarks of the inner realms of existence. And isn't love interwoven into all of these various concepts? To recognize beauty, to feel compassion for another, to experience peace and harmony. Don't we need to feel love on some level? Well, many people tend to use the word love very casually. Actually, probably most of us do. We use it to indicate things that we like. I love the beautiful flowers. I love being in New Zealand. I love French fries. At other times, we use the word in a more personal way. I love my children. Interesting, isn't it? I don't love French fries the same way that I love my children. They are very different feelings, but we use the same terminology. Not that there's anything wrong with sending out the vibrations when we use the word love. In fact, it probably makes us happy to think about those vibrations rippling out into the mental field of consciousness. But the casual uses of the word love, even love for family, which is a personal type of love, are not what we are talking about here. This is not the love that is at the core of life, at the heart of Theosophy. The love that exists as the heart of Theosophy is much deeper and broader. D. Perucker, in his book, The Golden Precepts of Esotericism, writes, "Love is the cement of the universe. It holds all things in place and in eternal keeping. Its very nature is celestial peace. Its very characteristic is cosmic harmony, permeating all things, boundless, deathless, infinite, eternal. It is everywhere and is the very heart of all that is." D. Perucker's statement sounds as if this type of love is a synonym for the ultimate reality that permeates all things, everywhere, and is the heart of all that is. This love, the very heart of all that is, I keep repeating it, it's such a beautiful phrase. It has no personal implications. It is universal and impersonal. It is a love that goes beyond anything we can imagine, except possibly in those few moments of meditation or intuitive leaps that we have towards the divine. You know, those that we are almost there, we can almost catch it, and then it's gone. But we can try again. What we are talking about is love beyond all measure for humanity. Here, we are talking about a specific type of love. Agape love, as the Greeks used the word. Agape love can be defined as the highest form of love. A love that incorporates empathy, compassion, understanding, unconditional love, the love of the infinite for humanity, and the love of humanity for the infinite. Paul Coelho, in his book, The Pilgrimage, writes, "Agape is total love. It is the love that consumes the person who experiences it. Whoever knows and experiences agape learns that nothing else in the world is important, just love." Martin Luther King includes agape as one of the essential elements in his philosophy of nonviolence, writing, Agape means understanding, redeeming goodwill for all men. It is an overflowing love which is purely spontaneous, unmotivated, groundless, and creative. It is not set in motion by any quality or function of its object. Agape is disinterested love. It is a love in which the individual seeks not his own good, but the good of his neighbor. Agape does not begin by discriminating between worthy and unworthy people, or any qualities people possess. It begins by loving others for their own sakes. It is an entirely neighbor-regarding concern for others, which discovers the neighbor in every person it meets. Therefore, agape makes no distinction between friends and enemies. It is directed toward both. If one loves an individual merely on account of his friendliness, he loves him for the sake of the benefits to be gained from the friendship, rather than for the friend's own sake. Consequently, the best way to assure oneself that love is disinterested is to have love for the enemy neighbor from whom you can expect no good in return, but only hostility and persecution. Asking a lot, isn't it? We hear echoes of the concept of metta, or loving kindness, in this quote by Dr. King, whose studies and philosophy pulled from a variety of sources, including spiritual and philosophical traditions from around the world. The quotes from Paul Coelho and Dr. King point us back to what Theosophists have known since HPB began writing, and about which many of us have an innate understanding. This love, agape love, is at the center of the ageless wisdom. D. Perucker, while not using the term agape, describes it for us saying, the more impersonal love is, the higher it is, and the more powerful. Impartial love is love that has no attachment. Once we have attachment, love of family, for instance, while it is a form of love, it is not universal love. Imagine loving everyone in the same way you love your children, your partner, or whoever is your most beloved. In a couple of days ago, my sister and I were, I don't even know where we were. It's been a whirlwind. But I saw an older man searching in the garbage can on the street. And I assumed that he was looking for food and that he was probably homeless. I don't know. I was making assumptions. And what crossed my mind was, do I love this man the same way I love my children? The answer, sadly, was no. But it's where I want to be. Brother In Sri Ram, former international president of the Theosophical Society, tells us, the love which deserves that name is impartial, non-possessive, wholly beneficent. In that love alone is to be discovered the force which will ultimately bring man to his freedom. Love is the only force which does not create or add to the complications of karma. We may be reminded of the incredible love of the elder brothers and sisters of humanity who work to raise the consciousness of all beings. As we read in the literature, these elders have given up the opportunity of nirvana for the sake of humanity. They have chosen to stay behind, to remain in touch with humanity, with us, until all have achieved enlightenment. Their love for humanity, we may assume, surpasses our understanding, both in its universality and in its impersonal nature. It's hard to imagine, isn't it? A love so great and so intense, yet so impersonal. As seekers for the divine wisdom, we strive toward agape love. We're told in At the Feet of the Master, of all the qualifications, love is the most important. For if it is strong enough in a person, it forces one to acquire all the rest. And all the rest, without it, would never be sufficient. And Brother Sri Ram said, without love, there is no unfoldment, because love belongs to the life of the Spirit, to the real self. Without love, all search is in vain. Love that belongs to the life of the real self, as In Sri Ram calls it, is often referred to as altruism or philanthropy in theosophical writings. Again, these words are not used in a typical or casual sense, but denote the highest form of altruism or philanthropy, service to humanity. So the Mahatma K.H. writes, the first object of the society is philanthropy. The true theosophist is the philanthropist who, not for himself, but for the world he lives. In the Key to Theosophy, HPB tells us every true theosophist is morally bound to sacrifice the personal to the impersonal, his own present good to the future benefit of other people. She defined true occultism as altruism, and she further tells us that a true theosophist must put in practice the loftiest moral ideal, must strive to realize his unity with the whole of humanity, and work ceaselessly for others. It's very clear that the heart of theosophy is altruism, another word for love, agape love. Love that is, as Sri Ram said, impartial, non-possessive, wholly beneficent. So before we continue, let's look a little bit at what we mean by the word soul. It means many things to many different people. So we can use a dictionary definition, which is given here: the immaterial essence, animating principle, or actuating cause of an individual life. I'm not sure I even understand what that means. When we define soul, it's clear that we have to go further than this. We're using the word in a very specific and particular way. We're referring to a theosophical explanation of the word soul. So looking at some of the definitions that are given by HPB may be helpful. Okay, for those of you whose tummies are full and it's later in the evening, this is the time to doze, okay? Because I'm going to quote HPB. And as much as I love her, she can put us to dozing pretty quickly. And if you fall asleep and start to snore, I probably won't wake you up, but I might point you out. In the Key to Theosophy, HPB talks about, she refers to A.P. Sennett's book, Esoteric Buddhism, in which he uses terminology that identifies three types of souls: animal, human, and spiritual. Further in the text, she says, soul, being a generic term, there are in humans three aspects of soul: the terrestrial or animal, the human soul, and the spiritual soul. These, strictly speaking, are one soul in its three aspects. She equates manas, typically translated as mind, as the soul in general, clarifying that it has two aspects. She says, we have manas, or the soul in general, in its two aspects. When attaching itself to annoya, love it when they use words I have no idea what they mean. When attaching itself to annoya, our kama rupa, or the animal soul, as it's referred to in esoteric Buddhism, it runs toward entire annihilation, as far as the personal ego is concerned. When allying itself to the nous, atma buddhi, it merges into the immortal, imperishable ego. And then its spiritual consciousness of the personal that was becomes immortal. Okay, thank you, HPB. While there are clearly many ways to define soul, it makes sense for us to look at this in a little bit more detail, looking specifically at what HPB calls the human soul, or in theosophical terminology, manas. But it's a particular form of a particular aspect of manas that we need to address. All right, my very sad graphic here. So this is the sevenfold constitution of a human being. I'm sure many of you all are more than familiar with it. Manas are the mental field of consciousness. Manas, here's manas. We have higher manas and lower manas. So it's divided into the two aspects. Generally, typically described as higher manas and lower manas, or higher mind and lower mind. Manas, we are to understand, is a field of consciousness that provides a bridge between the physical and spiritual components of a human being. So it can go in either direction. If it goes lower toward kama, or the emotional field of consciousness, it is referred to then as kama manas. Or if it extends upward toward the Buddhic field of consciousness, it is referred to as buddhi manas. These are the permanent aspects of the self. These are the temporary aspects of the self that dissolve upon or after the physical death of the body. This is a review for most of you. In her article, Occultism versus the Occult Arts, HPB tells us the personal or human soul is a compound in its highest form of spiritual aspirations, volitions, and divine love, and in its lower aspect of animal desires and terrestrial passions imparted to it by its association with its vehicle, the seat of all these. It thus stands as a link and a medium between the animal nature of man, which its higher reason seeks to subdue, and his divine spiritual nature, to which it gravitates whenever it has the upper hand in its struggle with the inner animal. In the Key to Theosophy, HPB tells us that when higher manas is illuminated by the Buddhic aspect of consciousness, it is referred to as buddhi manas. We also call it, in theosophical terminology, the causal body. It is this aspect of a human being that connects with the personality. So, if we want to look at the definition of a soul, because we're talking about the soul's journey, so we need to know what we're talking about, we can define soul as the causal body, higher manas, as illuminated by our Buddhic nature, or buddhi manas. So, just a reminder, we talk about higher and lower and inner and outer and, there is nothing about the constitution of a human being that is directional. Nothing. These are terms that really describe density of matter and its frequency of energetic vibration. Higher indicating less density of matter and a more rapid, frequency of vibration, while lower indicates more density of matter and a slower rate of energetic vibration. We talk about them as if they are distinct and separate from one another. In that graph, it looked like they were all separate. They're not. Well, I don't think they are. My studies indicate that they're not. I don't know it as a literal fact. My understanding is there is no separation. Rather, they're interpenetrating, defined by their vibratory frequency and density of matter. So, at this point, we've looked a bit at the heart of Theosophy and identified it as that agape love, altruism, philanthropy in its highest form. And we've identified soul in the theosophical sense as the causal body, or buddhi-manas, which is higher manas, illuminated by our Buddhic nature. But now let's talk about the journey, because that's, I think, what's really important to us, because it is the journey that we are on. Journey can be defined as, obviously, something suggesting travel or passage from one place to another. And according to the dictionary, a journey means to travel over or through. Our souls, then, are passing from one place to another, traveling over or through places and situations. So what does that mean? As is typical in the ageless wisdom tradition, the end leads back to the beginning, but at a deeper place on the spiral of growing wisdom. Based on our previous discussion, the permanent aspect of ourselves, the causal body or buddhi-manas, the soul, is facilitating our travel or passage through experiences on this physical plane. As Theosophists, we recognize the term progressive spiritual development. This means, of course, that our souls lead us on a journey to progress spiritually, to expand our conscious awareness of reality, to truly become one with the Absolute, to become one with all that is. This journey will ultimately, eventually lead us to the deepest aspects of love, altruism, and philanthropy, to the heart of Theosophy. All beings must take this journey of progressive spiritual development. Everyone in the world, everyone is on this path of progressive spiritual development, whether they are aware of it or not. As the Mahatma M. wrote in letter number 44 in the chronological series, nothing in nature springs into existence suddenly, all being subjected to the same law of gradual evolution. The soul sends forth a ray of itself into physical manifestation, into these bodies, so that we may evolve. And through these bodies, we have experiences that involve difficulties, trials, and tribulations, as well as joy and happiness. Our temporal personality is having these experiences right now. And the seeds of the lessons from the experiences are then stored in the causal body, becoming a part of our eternal awareness. The seeds from these lessons form the basis for many of our decisions. For instance, have you ever wondered why you don't get up in the morning and start thinking about murdering somebody or stealing from somebody? I mean, we don't, do we? Why not? I think some people actually do. Lessons learned, right? So, as we're told in Light on the Path, in the note for rule number 5, before you can attain knowledge, you must have passed through all places, foul and clean alike. Therefore, remember that the soiled garment you shrink from touching may have been yours yesterday, may be yours tomorrow. And if you turn with horror from it, when it is flung upon your shoulders, it will cling the more closely to you. We have done all sorts of things in previous incarnations to be where we are today. Good things, awful things. This journey of progressive development is what many individuals would perceive as the journey of our soul. However, as in most things occult, at least from what I've learned from my own studies, nothing is ever that simple or straightforward. All beings, as we said, are on the journey of progressive spiritual development, but there's more. At some point, our souls make a choice. We choose the specific pathway for our journey of spiritual development. The voice of the silence in fragment 2 describes two paths, the open path and the secret path. We are told that we will have to choose between the two paths. The book says that the open path is, quote, the way to selfish bliss, shunned by the bodhisattvas of the secret heart, the Buddhas of compassion. We are also told that taking the secret path is to forego eternal bliss for self, to help on man's salvation. To reach nirvana's bliss, but to renounce it, is the supreme, the final step, the highest on renunciation's path. The path is one, disciple, we are told, yet in the end, twofold. At one end, bliss immediate, and at the other, bliss deferred. Both are of merit, the reward. The choice is thine. The one becomes the two, the open and the secret. The first one leadeth to the goal, the second to self-immolation. Thus, the first path is liberation, but path the second is renunciation, and therefore called the path of woe. Joy Mills, in her book, From Inner to Outer Transformation, says, as is evident throughout the voice of the silence, and indeed throughout all of HPB's writings, the Dharma, or way inherent in the Theosophical worldview, is that of the Bodhisattva, the path of renunciation. Ours is the secret path. As Theosophists, we live to serve humanity, while we also traverse the path of progressive spiritual development. 2 for the price of 1. Our souls have chosen a journey that leads us to selfless service to humanity, or to what is referred to as the Bodhisattva path. It is a path based on the love that we have identified as the heart of Theosophy. Our path, our goal, at least for this part of our journey, is to facilitate the expansion of consciousness of all beings, thus alleviating the suffering in the world. Although you're likely aware, in the Mahayana Buddhist tradition, a bodhisattva is one who has attained enlightenment, but delays entering nirvana in order to help others also attain enlightenment. It is considered the path of compassion. A bodhisattva sacrifices himself or herself in order to help suffering humanity. In his 2011 Blavatsky lecture entitled The Bodhisattva Path, Bhupendra Vora tells us, the Bodhisattvas or Mahatmas are driven by an impelling desire to help alleviate suffering in the world and to lead all sentient life to liberation. They're not merely beings on their way to the status of fully enlightened Buddhas or adepts, but are beings who, through their great compassion for all sentient life, renounce the ultimate bliss for themselves. It is this spirit of compassion and love, implicit in the principle of universal brotherhood, which should be the guiding light of a theosophist. To understand the oneness of all existence is to develop an intense state of spiritual love, divine wisdom, and compassion, founded upon an impelling will to help all sentient life. The guiding light of a theosophist. At some point in our individual journeys, we realized that our souls were committed to following in the path of the Mahatmas, the teachers of Blavatsky. We made a conscious decision to become true occultists, philanthropic, altruistic, theosophists, whose goal is to work for those great ones in the service of humanity. We chose to follow the Bodhisattva path, the path of love that in Sri Ram described as impartial, non-possessive, wholly beneficent. This path, according to HPB, is one that, although the Mahatmas have attained the right to enter in nirvana, they renounce it in order to stay in touch with humanity. The hitherto very esoteric doctrine of the Nirmanakayas was lately brought forward as a proof and explained in the treatise called The Voice of the Silence. These Nirmanakayas are the bodhisattvas, or late adepts, who, having reached nirvana and liberation from rebirth, renounce it voluntarily in order to remain invisibly amidst the world to help poor, ignorant humanity within the lines permitted by karma. We have chosen, to the best of our ability, whatever that is, to focus on alleviating the suffering of humanity. One who follows the Bodhisattva path is an individual whose thoughts, words, and actions focus on serving the well-being of all others, not merely in a physical sense, but in the highest sense of facilitating enlightenment. The voice of the silence asks, can there be bliss when all that lives must suffer? Shall thou be saved and hear the whole world cry? Our souls have taken this verse to heart and responded that we will serve until all are liberated from rebirth. As it says in the voice of the silence, let thy soul lend its ear to every cry of pain, like as the lotus bears its heart to drink the morning sun. Let not the fierce sun dry one tear of pain before thyself has wiped it from the sufferer's eye, but let each burning tear drop on thy heart, and there remain, nor ever brush it off until the pain that caused it is removed. This is the Bodhisattva way. The voice of the silence continues. These tears, O thou of heart most merciful, these are the streams that irrigate the fields of charity immortal. 'Tis on such soil that grows the midnight blossom of Buddha, more difficult to find, more rare to view than the flower of the vogue tree. It is the seed of freedom from rebirth. It isolates the arhat both from strife and lust. It leads him through the fields of being into the peace and bliss known only in the land of silence and non-being. The compassion that we feel, these tears, are the foundation or seed of freedom from rebirth. The voice of the silence tells us that compassion is the law of laws, eternal harmony. We are enjoined to become compassion absolute when we are told, quote, "The more dost thou become at one with it, thy being melted into its being. The more thy soul unites with that which is, the more thou wilt become compassion absolute." When the voice of the silence asks, "Can there be bliss when all that lives must suffer? Shalt thou be saved and hear the whole world cry?" As Theosophists, we answer no, because we have chosen, self-chosen, the path of renunciation, the path of the Bodhisattva for the sake of humanity. We will remain with humanity until all pain is removed, until all suffering is gone, until the world cries no more. I love this picture of the lotus. Our actions, to the best of our ability, are based on agape love. Our souls, buddhimanas, guides us on the path of progressive spiritual development that all beings must take. However, our souls have also chosen to walk this path in a specific way. We have chosen the path of the Bodhisattva. As we choose to walk this path, not only are we choosing to remain with humanity until all are enlightened and suffering is ended, we are also choosing to take what M. Scott Peck would likely call the road less traveled. On this road less traveled, the Bodhisattva path, we are making a commitment to speed up our spiritual development, not our psychic development, but our spiritual development. We are committed to walking toward the summit of enlightenment as quickly as possible. Therefore, we don't take the slower path around the mountain to get to the summit with its many switchbacks and slow movement. We forge a path straight up the side of the mountain to reach the summit as quickly as possible. Beautiful metaphors, but what does it really mean? It means that we are committing to take on as much karma as possible in each lifetime. Why would anybody do that? There's plenty to go around. But we do it because it is needed by humanity, because it's part of the Bodhisattva path. As it says in Light on the Path, we want to add our strength to the few strong hands that hold back the powers of darkness from obtaining complete victory. We are told that by doing so, we enter into a partnership of joy, which brings, indeed, terrible toil and profound sadness, but also a great and ever-increasing delight. Think of our elder brothers and sisters who have done so. We know people, don't we, who have said out loud, "I want to work off as much karma as I can in this lifetime so that I can be of more assistance in this great work." maybe I need to have some counseling sessions with those people, but regardless of whether we've said it aloud or not, our souls have said it. Many of us have made this commitment in our innermost being. Our souls have chosen a journey. The journey is the path of the Bodhisattva, the path of selflessness and renunciation for the sake of humanity. It is a path chosen by the few, based on selfless and impersonal love for all of humanity. It is a path that takes us straight up to the summit of the mountain of enlightenment. And it is the heart of Theosophy which draws us forward. It compels us to serve, to alleviate the suffering of humanity, and to facilitate the expansion of consciousness so that all beings may know peace and light, so that we may join with those few in holding back the powers of darkness from obtaining complete victory. Thank you.